of Pleasure Principles, the podcast wisdom wears heels. That's amazing, right, dear listeners? Yeah. So today's guest is not just a coach, she's an intimacy alchemist, a tantra trainer, and the founder of the Yum Sensual and Sexual Liberation Program, Hani Cheng. So welcome to the show, Hani.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Lovely, lovely. Nice to have you here, Hani, as well. And dear listeners, before we start, I would quickly love to introduce you with her. So, dear listeners, Hani is here to talk all things about the orgasmic energy, sacred kink, and the radical and the sensual embodiment. So, if you have ever wondered, like, how pleasure can become your power source, or you can say how to reclaim your sensuality without the shame, so get ready because this conversation is going to be widely liberating. So, wait. Let's get started. Welcome to the show again.
Yes. Shame. What a fun topic to talk about.
Yeah, yeah. So, honey, like, you talk about arousal as the life force energy, not just something uh, confined to the bedroom. So, how can we begin to tap this energy into our daily lives, especially when um, stress or shame blocks the flow? What do you say?
Absolutely. It's really easy to say that shame and stress blocks arousal, right? And it's something that everyone kind of experiences in their relationships, whether you have like a committed partner or you are in a relationship or wanting to be in a relationship. You can definitely tell like when you're aroused and then when sometimes you're just not aroused.
Mm,
And so it's easy to see when the work and day-to-day life stresses affects your ability to either for men, get excited,
mm,
get hard, or even stay hard, right? And so that a lot of that has to do with not only just the amount of attraction you have for that person, but it has everything to do with all the inner workings of you as well. I
mm,
literally just spoke to a client today and he's in like this long-term, super long-term relationship with a human he absolutely adores and absolutely loves. And
mm,
yet their sex life is not 100% fulfilling. In fact, he gave it a B plus. And so he was faced with the question of, am I going to want to marry this person and accept this? And yeah, and maybe it's just that, I just have to accept this and, realize that our priorities are raising kids and being good parents and so many other things. And sex doesn't really have to be, and arousal doesn't have to be a priority. And when I listened to that, I just had so much empathy with him. And I just realized, like, wow, like so many times in our relationships, when our sex is not good with our partners, we think, we don't need it because we love them so much. And yet there's so many opportunities to make it the best thing in our lives. And so I gave him a perspective which I think could really help everyone here as well, and to show how arousal affects. Because, we went through millions of questions, not millions, but maybe at least like 7, 8, 9 sessions,
okay.
breaking down every aspect of the relationship, every aspect of an ideal marriage, every aspect of an ideal partnership, every aspect of an ideal life, right? Like how
Mm,
happy are you in your career and stuff. And then when we got to the sexuality portion, um, I realized that I shared with him my story of, I never allowed ever my desire
mm,
to be a guiding light in my life. I never even dared to look at my desire because I was afraid
okay.
that for my desire to be free, I would be a walking, wild, horny, like dripping vagina. And that is not necessarily true, right? We
Yeah.
can't use a black and white binary system to look at either you're turned on or you're turned off. There's actually a whole spectrum of everything in between. From joyfulness being sensuality, from like being able to connect with nature being a form of, connection and intimacy with nature, that
Mm,
intimate conversations talking about things that you've never thought of before, that is so deeply connected to your heart as a form of
Yeah.
intimacy, which can also be a turn on and an arousal thing. It doesn't have to directly link to genital engorgement arousal. So the first thing is dismantling arousing or arousal to activity in the genitals, because it could be also activity in your heart. There's such a thing called heartgasm. And so that's number 1. And then number 2 is to realize that when you're in an intimate connection with someone, you're talking about, I really would love for you to pleasure me and show me, tell my peach, like, how gorgeous you find her, and I want you to, look at her shape and describe to me the color of her and tell me what you love about her. Like, when I can voice that desire, it doesn't even have to be um, it doesn't have to be physical, right? It can be like something
Yeah.
that's just like, I just want you to communicate with her. And the impact of that on a relationship is so much more giggling, so much more like, "Oh my gosh, that's so cool that you
Yeah.
did that." You get so much more affection for each other. The next day, you're kinda like, "Ooh, like, what's going on over there?" You get flirty, you get playful, and then that playfulness goes into your day. You go to work and you're like, you just got a hop in your step. You're, like, very confident because you just remember that fun little thing you did with your lover in the morning, and that becomes a state of openness, a state of playfulness, a state of, excitement. He told me that he hasn't felt excitement. One of my clients was like, "I haven't felt excitement about this for years." He's like, "I went to couples therapy, I went to therapy, and, I don't even I'm so confused what I should do with this relationship." And so when I was able to introduce and share with him that, when we look at our sex lives as a place to practice vulnerability, to practice honesty, and to practice to honor our desires and realize that, actually, our desires have a voice. We can actually explore it without falling into a place of completely losing ourselves to, like, I don't know, every people are like, "You're gonna lose yourself." There's this fear, it's like, "If I give in to my desires, I'm just gonna be watching porn every second of every day?" And it's just like, are you really? Like, you're gonna get bored after a while, first of all, and second of all, it's just on the screen, like, I'm sure you're gonna wanna do something, and then you're like, "Oh, I just wanna pound that person all day and all night," and it's like, really?" Like, I think you're gonna get bored after a while too, and physically, it's very impossible. So it's like there's so many other flavors. You're not gonna eat fast McDonald's sex every single day, right? And so that's another thing. And then so when you recognize that, first of all, I can have desire. Second of all, I don't have to accept a B plus sex life just because right now we've been doing a B plus sex life for 10 years doesn't mean that it has to stay this way. And you don't have to accept it if you're married either. There's always a way to deepen. There's always a way to make it even better. One of my clients was telling me, I want that firefly and like fireworks and, like, butterflies, but I've never experienced before, but I believe that's what love is, or maybe it's not what infatuation is, and I'm just like, yes, it is when you were, like, a teenager, and as an adult in your 30s, 40s, 50s, or 60s, you can still create that. So it's not
Right.
about changing the person, it's changing the circuitry and the neural pathway of your body to activate it, train it, just like you train a meditation muscle and you meditate every single day, train that firework. Right? Sometimes both parties don't wanna have sex. They're like, "I'm not into it. I'm stressed." The other person's like, "I'm not into it either. I'm stressed." And they're like, "But Hani told us we have to do this, so let's do it for 15 minutes." And then they do it, and then they find the arousal even when they don't want to, and then it's there. So it doesn't have to lead to orgasm at each time. It is really about, making time for it and prioritizing it and being not
Exactly.
ashamed that you're not happy with where you are now, and then knowing that you don't have to break up with a person to find a better sex life. You can just do it with the relationship you have, even though it kind of feels awkward in the beginning because you're just like, I don't know if he's ever gonna be that. And like some people are afraid of being disappointed more there than they are willing to find a solution.
True, definitely. I mean, that's so powerful. I mean, because so many of us kind of walk around half alive, mistaking the numbness for normal. And I love like how you invite us back into the vibrancy. That's amazing. So, like, let's get into the sacred reclaiming of slut. You call it holy. So that's radical and refreshing as well. So how does this shift in language and, I have to say, in the intention, help someone break free from this kind of um, internalized shame? What do you say?
Can you repeat your question in a different way?
Yeah, I'm saying like you call it I mean the slut, you call it as a it holy, right? So
What do I call this holy? Sorry, I'm just
okay, sacred reclaiming of slut.
oh, sacred reclaiming of our inner sluts.
Yeah.
That's holy. Yes.
Yeah. So if you
How
can
can we let
share
go of that shame?
exactly. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay, that's so beautiful.
Mhm.
So, so what is a slut, right? A slut is someone who is in many ways
Mm.
completely embodying her sexuality and her sensuality. And for a guy, it's what like you hear people call them a
Yeah.
man horse or like
Mm.
what is it, playboys or there's some other words I forgot what they got like basically someone who like wants to have sex all the time.
Mm.
And so, how can we make it into a sacred, holy aspect? The
Yeah.
intention, like what you were mentioning, is the first and foremost, the most important. Is your purpose here to connect,
Mhm.
to share love, or is your purpose here to take? If you're here to
Mm.
take from the other person, then you're a taker. You're not a giver, you're just a taker. If you're here to only give, then you're just a giver. However, if you are here to co create and your intention is to have a dialogue, like some people you talk to them and all they want to do is just talk at you and just share
Yeah.
in their breast like, at a dinner table or something, someone, like, dominates the conversation, there's, like, 10, 20 people, and, like, all you hear is the
Mhm.
one person's voice, and so when you're having sex, is that what you're doing? Or are you able to have a dialogue? You, like, take, like, 1 minute, and then you check in and see, like, what's the response, you know? So, in that sense, you are a conversationalist in bed, and um that would be co-creative, which would allow you to own your desires. Owning your desires and your true desires. I'm not just talking about your fantastical ones. It's really voicing them as well, right? So you have to have the communication skills, which we teach in module 3 of our program, which basically
Mm.
gives you 8 different frameworks to talk about sex, before sex, during sex, and after sex, and how to create more intimacy and connection through dialogue. And then so that's one, to claim your inner slut. And then realizing that your inner slut is not something that is crazy. And then the third thing is to realize that no matter what you feel, whether that's shameful or not shameful, it's about the truth. Are you ashamed of the truth? What if you knew what the truth was? Would you be able to share that? And for someone who really loves you, how fun is it for you to hear the truth?
Yeah.
I was just sharing that
Yeah.
that the third thing is
Mhm.
to share your truth, and there's a differentiation between if you're ashamed of something that is fake
Mhm. Okay.
and if you're ashamed of something that is true. And so if
Ah.
your desire is to ravish your loved ones like a wolf drinking and eating his prey,
Oh,
then if that's your
okay.
truth, like, you can be ashamed of it, sure, but if that's your
Mhm.
truth, how cool would it be if she's like, "Oh,
Yeah,
let's
exactly.
see how we can make this happen," and if her truth is like, "You know what? I really want you to do X, Y, Z, A, B, C," and you're like,
Mm.
"Oh, I never thought about but let me like, let's unpack this and see if I can satisfy you, you know?"
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not about shame, it's just about sharing in a non-judgmental place, and if they
True.
are able to listen to you without judgment, then you feel safe, but if they're like, "Ew, like, gross," then you're like, "I'm never gonna tell you anything anymore."
Yeah, that's amazing.
So
And yeah, yeah, I mean, yeah, that's really amazing. And as you mentioned about the judgment thing, this thing is coming to my mind. Like, how do you coach people through that internal conflict? I mean, the judgment versus the desire. So,
yeah, absolutely. So people usually tell me, all the I look at all the thoughts that are going through their head. Let's say, um, for example, what do we have? People wanna feel desired and people wanna
mhm,
feel like they're, like, the chosen one,
yeah,
and so then they're like, "I really want her to, like, vibe me like she's never had a better, like, um,
mhm,
dick in her
yeah,
pussy," or something like that, and I'm like, "Okay,
mhm,
cool." So wait, what was your question? I was gonna use that as a scenario.
yeah. So, I mean, how do you guide them through that
Oh,
internal?
and then they're like,
Yeah.
"But however, like, when she's doing that, I don't wanna tell her how to do it because I'm really already really grateful that she's right
Mhm,
me, but, like, actually, it would be more fun if, like, this and that and this and that." And I was like, "So what happens like, at this moment?" And they're like, "Oh, well, like, I start, like, getting in my head, and then I start getting soft." And I'm like, "No, no, no, I need to stay hard, I need to stay hard." And, like, so then there's this, like, internal conflict of, like, they wanna
yeah.
get feedback, but or they want this, but then they don't wanna do
Mhm,
that, or like they do it and then they feel guilty and like this and like there's all sorts of things happening, right? And so
yeah.
people with like performance anxiety, like premature ejaculation, they're like, I want to last longer, but like it
Mhm,
just turns around so much and I just come. And I'm just like, okay, so let's take a look at all of these processes. And then for me, I look at the processes of what's happening in their heads. And then
mhm,
I just challenge each one of them. Just like, is this
okay.
truly true? Or like, are we, and then I can hear what's not true and what's true, and the easiest way to do that is to see if it leads to a better feeling outcome.
Exactly.
Yeah, and if that other person it's like a win-win is usually a really beautiful truth. A win-win-win, even better. If it's winning for me, winning for you, and winning
Mhm.
for the relationship, it's a really, really good place to be.
Exactly. Exactly. Very true. I mean, that's tension is so, so real. Definitely. Many listeners are navigating the same age, I believe. Yeah. So, uh, also, like when we're talking um, uh, about the, I mean, guiding people. So, also, this thing comes like you also guide people through the conscious uncoupling, like
Mhm.
breakups without the burnouts. So, what do you think is the biggest misconception people have? Uh, people have about ending relationships with love.
That that is not possible. A lot of people, like, when you're watching the movies or when you watch on reality TV, like, at the ending of a relationship is just like, "Hey, hey, I'm never gonna talk to you again. Here are all your clothes. I'm gonna throw it off the balcony." Like, that's sort of, like, what people believe, or it's something like, "I'm so sad. I'm never gonna meet my love again." Or it's something like, "This really, really, really sucks, and, like, I'm just gonna be alone forever," or, "I hate that person," or, like, whatever stuff, right? And so the idea of conscious uncoupling isn't even there. But I wanna know, like, what would like, the friend so the friendship is actually the highest form of relationship,
Mhm.
connecting without expectation. So romance and romantic relationships actually have expectations. I expect you to be a good husband. I expect you to be a good parent to my future
Mhm.
children. I expect you to do all these things, right? Like, what if there was no expectation? And so
Yeah.
is there a way to de-escalate our relationship into a relationship that is not only mutually beneficial, but we can still keep the good parts of it, the mutual support,
Mhm.
the love. Maybe it's not the sharing of finances, right? Because that's got to be separated. There's a lot of things that need to be separated. There's a lot of things that need to be de-escalated, but there are things that you can continue without actually affecting a friendship, like having a beautiful
Mhm.
friendship. Of course, people will take some time. So the unconscious uncoupling process or conscious uncoupling process is going through a lot of different phases to make sure you honor
Mhm.
the relationship, just like how you honor the dead. Imagine like a eulogy, right? You're going to like a crematory or a memorial or a wake and someone just passed away. Your relationship has just passed away. Imagine you standing on the top of the podium and you're reading about how beautiful this
Mhm.
person, this relationship was, giving
Yeah.
it the respect. respect and the honor that it deserves and the love because it was real. It's not a fake
Mhm.
love that you experience. Just because you're not happy now and it's not the right thing doesn't mean that you have to delete and negate the whole history of you.
Exactly.
Right? And
Yeah.
so when you realize that, then you know what? I loved every moment of this. And
Mm,
also, I love like, that we can have a future where we
mm,
have the best that we can have, even if it's not with each other. I wish you the best. I wish myself the best,
mm,
and let's go make the best out of our lives. It's like that kind of abundance mindset. You're not going through scarcity mindset. You're going
mm,
through an empowered experience. And of course, it takes a lot of inner work to get there. Because if the other person gets married, you're going to get jealous. If you get married, the other person's
mm,
going to get jealous. So, like, how can you work through these emotions to truly have true love? And to be able to get to a place where it's an authentic, genuine, um, appreciation. It's a long journey, but in the
mm,
short term, we take couples through, a series of 5 to 6 sessions to really be facilitated through the process of a beautiful ceremony. Just like a marriage, there's also a beautiful way of how you can complete something to make sure that the maximum love is held. And both parties come away with less trauma. They come away with more ability to enter in a loving relationship next. And they come away with so much more respect and
mm,
self confidence and appreciation for each other and themselves.
mm. Lovely, lovely. Wow. Like from sacred slugness to sovereign breath, Annie just reminded us, dear listeners, that sensuality isn't a kind of side dish. It's the main course of a turned on life. Yeah. So, dear listeners, if today lit something up inside you, then let it stay lit. Reconnect with your body, reclaim your pleasure, and remember, your sensual power isn't shameful, it's sacred. So, until next time, keep loving boldly and living fully. So, tune in, turn on, and transform. Thank you so much.